There are three options available from the Page Layout tab that we may not need all the time, but they can add emphasis and polish when we do. Like themes, they're fairly easy to apply once we know where to find them. They include watermarks, page color, and page border. And they're all found in the Page Background section or the Page Background group. A page border can add just a little bit of pizzazz or emphasis to a page or all of the pages in the document without regard to the actual content on the page. In other words, if we were to add a border to the text, it would only be as large as the text, whereas creating a page border creates one around the margins of the page, regardless of how full or empty that page may be or what type of content it has. So let's go ahead and give that a click. It's going to open up a dialog box for us with the Page Borders tab selected. We kind of just need to move from left to right. First of all, you can kind of choose some predefined ones. The default is no border. We can choose a box. We can choose a box with a shadow. We can do 3D, or we can do custom. I'm actually going to choose none so that we can configure this on our own. From kind of the middle column, this is where you can choose styles. You can do dashes, you can do dots, you can even scroll down, and you can get into some very creative or tricky different kinds of things. We again are going to keep this simple. So we're going to go back up to the top, and we're simply going to select a solid line. From there, though, regardless of which style you choose, you can choose a color. My recommendation is that you choose one from your theme so you make sure it matches. And then you can choose the width or the thickness of the line. Let's go ahead and do maybe 3 point. Let me make sure that I click back on that solid line too. There we go. The last thing that you can do using the right-hand side is to actually click to add or remove the borders that you want. As you see, you can click in different places. So if I only wanted a border on the top and the bottom of the page, we could go ahead and click just the top and the bottom, but not the left and the right. You also can use these little buttons if you prefer to do them that way. At this point, we're applying it to the whole document. Later on from this drop-down, you will see that you have options to work with certain sections, the first page only of this section, all except the first page, and so forth. Those can be very important. Since this is ultimately going to be a cover page, perhaps what we should say is, yes, we do want it on this section, but the first page only. That way the title page or the cover page will have it, but nothing else will. Just as a note, you can get creative. There is a drop down for art where you can use all kinds of different little shapes, which are kind of fun for things like invitations or holidays. Not exactly appropriate for a business plan, so we won't be using it here, but I did want to point that out. Once we get finished, we simply say OK. And what we can see is our border has been applied. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit so we can see exactly how this looks on the page. Remember, we said we only wanted it on the top and the bottom, so it is only on the top and the bottom. Let's zoom in a little bit, like so. The next choice that we have has to do with page color, and this again is one that I don't think you're probably going to want to use all the time. I think it's useful in specific situations, maybe 2 specific situations. One is to see how our documents will look if we print them on colored paper, and the second is if we will be converting the document to a web page and we want to have some type of colored background. That way we can be sure it's going to look the way we want it to be on screen. It's probably not too often that we would actually put a solid colored background on a page using this method if we were going to print it, because the cost for the ink or the toner would be astronomical. But the other scenarios certainly are realistic. So if I wanted to print this on red paper, I could come to the page color, I could choose red, and as you can see in the background with our live preview, this will show me exactly what it's going to look like on red paper. We also have the option to do no color. In addition, like the rest of Office, we could also use something like fill effects. Let me just give this a click real quick to show you what's available. We could do colored gradients, but we also can do things like textures or even patterns. So again, if we were doing something fancy and we wanted to have maybe a granite type of look, we could add that by using the page background. We also could click other texture if we had a to use. Let's go ahead and just do cancel. And let's not put a background because this ultimately will be printed out. It's a professional document for business and marketing purposes, so we don't need to get too creative with it at this point. The one tool that is used often in business, though, is a watermark, and that's our last option that we have from this particular group that we're going to talk about. In the very old days, we used to create watermarks by starting a header or footer and then placing the content on the page instead of actually in the top or bottom of the page. Well, we've come a long way since those days, and now Word provides easy, elegant options for both text and graphical watermarks. Let's go ahead, click on this drop down. And again, we get to see a gallery with some very common things. For example, the text-based watermarks. We have different things of confidential, do not copy, urgent, and so forth. A majority of these are simply going to be the difference between angled text and horizontal or flat text. If we don't want to use one of these, we might have some available from office.com if you're connected. Currently, ours says that there are no watermarks available, so that's okay. We'll just come down and click on Custom Watermark. This is going to open up a window that gives us the option to choose our own picture or our own text. Let's actually start with text. By clicking there, we can start by telling it what language we're using, and then we can type in the text that we want. For example, if I don't want ASAP or urgent or do not copy or draft, I could put in maybe the name of the company. Then it's simply a matter of choosing the font, choosing the size, choosing the color, and then if you want it diagonal or horizontal. My recommendation is that normally you're probably going to want to leave it to be auto-sized. That way it will be correctly sized and we don't have to guess. Also, the default color is probably going to be the best choice, and making it semi-transparent, just make sure that it doesn't look like text. Usually these default settings are all just perfect, but if you do want to play with them a little bit, feel free to do so. Now, when it comes to a picture watermark, we need to select that option from the top, and then of course we need to select the picture itself. We have a copy of the You Got It logo in our project files, so let's click on Select Picture. Navigate to the desktop if necessary, and of course go into our project files folder, into Chapter 2, and here we should see the file called You Got It logo. We'll give that a double click. And like we had with our text, we do have some options. We're going to leave it to auto scale or auto size, and we want it to automatically wash out. This used to be one of the things that was difficult in the old days again. We had to know how to go into a photo editing program to make it appropriate. Otherwise it showed up in its full color and it really was too obvious. Watermarks are supposed to be subtle. So simply choosing this washout option is going to do that for us. Notice that you cannot choose both a text and a picture watermark. It has to be one or the other. Or if you wanted to remove the watermark, you would choose no watermark. We'll go ahead and click OK. And it may be a little bit difficult to see, but let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And hopefully you can see very subtly in the background we have the You Got It logo. One thing to remember is that when we use this method, easy as it may be, it adds the watermark to the entire document. If we wanted different watermarks in different parts of the document, we'd have to use sections and go about it in a little bit different way. For most of us, this is exactly what we want to accomplish with a watermark, having it consistently identify our company or the status of our document throughout the whole file. We probably won't use them a majority of the time, but when we want them, watermarks along with page color and page borders offer quick ways to dress up a document with just a few clicks and get the touch of class that we may